Well, welcome everybody to our 9 o'clock service here at Washington Heights. So glad that you are here. And as we say every week, I want to let you know again, if you're here for the first time, or maybe we haven't had the opportunity to say hi, right at the end of our service, there is an opportunity to take a step in the direction, as Kitty Aki was just talking about, of helping this place feel more like home, more on a first name basis. We call it our meet and greet area, and my wife and I will be available right off the platform here. We would love to say hi to you and get to know just a little bit about you. We promise we won't keep you very long. Well, we're in a series that we began a few weeks ago, and it is called Greater. And we're making our way through a New Testament letter called Colossians, and we're looking at how Jesus is greater. Well, greater than what? Greater than everything and greater than anything. And today we're going to take a look at how Jesus is greater than any circumstance we may face. And I want to remind you about this before we jump into the message as well. And along the way, we've let you know if you text the word devotion to that number on the screen, Monday through Friday, each day, you will get a text with a link to a devotional where we break down the passage that we're looking at today, and you can spend a little bit more time with it. You can make it more personal, and many of you have done that. And if you haven't yet, just know that that opportunity is still available to you, and we would love to get that to you on a regular basis. So let's talk about faith. In Colossians chapter 1, Paul was beginning by talking about Jesus. Who is Jesus really? And he gives us this amazing, incredible picture that he is above everything and he is the one who's created everything. And now in chapter 2, what Paul is doing is now saying, what difference does that make where you and I live? How do we build a faith in the Jesus of the Bible? What does that look like? And especially, how do we grow a faith that is not just there and not just effective on the good days, but maybe sustains us also on the tough days? And that can be a challenging thing to do because there can be a lot of voices out there that are telling us, hey, it's this direction. No, it's that direction. No, I tried this. I didn't do that. Have you ever listened to a voice that was not helpful to you? I can remember many years ago, I was in high school, and I'm walking out of the school and walking toward the parking lot, and there's a couple guys that I knew. They weren't friends or anything, but I knew who they were, and they just kind of looked over in my direction. They were pushing this Camaro, kind of down and making a turn onto the road by the school, and they say, hey, give us a hand. So I'm thinking, okay, just guess one of the guys had a problem with his car and maybe he needs some help. Well, almost by the time I get over there, I hear this other voice coming out of the school. It was the vice principal. It was his car. Cars were a lot less secure in that day. And I thought, every voice is not helpful. Every voice is not taking us in a good direction. How can we ever know what is going to lead us forward or what is going to take us in a whole different direction altogether? Well, we said this a couple times along the way here. The question in the city of Colossae, there was this new church there, and there was this idea, this teaching that Jesus is good. It's just that Jesus is not enough. That the Jesus that you know and the one that the Apostle Paul told you guys about in the city of Colossae, that's good, but Jesus is more like the springboard into the deep end of the pool. And let me introduce you to what these teachers were called back in those days. They're called Gnostics. It starts with a G, and it's a Greek word, and Gnostic or gnosis means knowledge or knowing. Maybe you've heard the term agnostic. That's somebody who says, I'm not sure there is a God. I'm not sure there isn't. I can't prove it. I can't disprove it. So I'm just not sure. So if that's agnostic, what is a Gnostic? They're claiming we do know. And so here were these people showing up when this church began, and they say, yeah, you've heard about Jesus. That's good. But we've got this secret, private kind of knowledge here. And we know some mysterious, deeper things that if you do what we tell you to do, you can have this as well. You're on the journey, but the journey ends over here. Jesus is good, but he's not enough. And the Jesus that you know, That's not the one, because we know him in a mystical, mysterious kind of way. And beyond that, they were also telling them that, it's not so much about a relationship with him. It's the things that you do that take you in the direction of the secret and private knowledge here. It's rituals more than relationship. And if you go through these hoops that we tell you because we have cracked the code on this, you can get there as well. Now, how do we know that was going on in the city of Colossae? Because what Paul is writing, and we're going to see him give some very specific direction here. We can kind of reverse engineer what he's talking about to get to the issue that he is addressing. And the whole issue centered around this question: is Jesus enough? And there was a group of people, some false teachers, some Gnostics, who were saying, he's good, but he's not enough. And in a time where faith in Jesus was growing, you know what came back in response to that? There was opposition. There was also imitation. And maybe the opposition is a little bit easier to spot, but what's happening there is what makes it so difficult, because it's not an outright flat denial saying don't follow Jesus and Jesus is no good. It's no, he's good. He's just not enough. And so the Apostle Paul writes this letter, and he's addressing this whole issue, and what he helps us to understand is Jesus is not only enough, he's more than enough. And so let's take a look as he begins to address these issues. Colossians chapter 2, verse 1. I want you to know how hard I am contending for you and those at Laodicea. What's Laodicea? It's kind of a sister city, not too far from Colossae. And for all who have not met me personally. And what's interesting is Paul didn't start this church in Colossae. A man named Epaphras did that. Paul's sitting in a Roman prison cell. He knows Epaphras. He hears about what's going on there. And when he uses the word contend, this is a wrestling word. It is a physical exertion word. It is using maximum effort here. So Paul is kind of giving us this idea that what we're talking about here, this is not, well, you believe this and you believe this. He's actually contending, he's wrestling, he's fighting for something of utmost importance and putting all of his energies into it. Well, what is his goal? My goal is that they may be encouraged in heart and united in love, so that they may have the full riches of complete understanding, in order that they may know the mystery of God, namely Christ. Do you see what he's aiming at there? There are people who say, yeah, Jesus is good, but the fullness is over here in this secret private place, and we have the knowledge. And if you do what we tell you to do, and you go through these steps and you perform these rituals, you will be able to be in that same level that we are. But it's not accessible to everyone. Only special people get there. And there's a mystery, and it's hidden from most, but we can tell you how to get there. And do you notice what Paul is telling them? Everything you need, all the fullness is found in Jesus. And if there's a mystery, Paul is telling us, the mystery is this: that the God who left heaven, Jesus, the one and only Son, who came to your rescue, in a relationship with him, he wants to make his life in you. He wants to live in you, and that is accessible to all who put their hope and trust in him. And if that wasn't clear enough, he addresses it again. In whom, Jesus, are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Is Jesus enough? Paul says he's more than enough. It's available to all. And so here are these different voices that have come, and they're leading people in all kinds of different directions. And it can be difficult for us to understand, well, how do I discern which voice is leading me toward God and which is leading me away from God, which is diluting the message, which is just, obliterating the message and making it something altogether different? Do you know how federal agents discover and identify counterfeit dollar bills, in our culture? And there's have been, just thousands and thousands of versions of counterfeit bills that have been tried to be passed off. So how do they do that? They don't study all of the counterfeits. Well, this one, then there's this one, and this one looks a little bit off here. You know what they do? They study the real one. And when you study the real one and know the real one, anything that's not the real one is a counterfeit. And so Paul is pointing the bullseye toward Jesus and saying, you know what? He is enough. And in a relationship with him, you have enough. He is over everything. He is the creator of everything. And in him, there is everything you need for a life that is honoring and pleasing to God. Now, Paul, why are you writing this? I tell you this so that no one may deceive you by fine-sounding arguments. A lot of different voices speaking, and some of them can sound really, really good. So what does all that mean? Confront the deceptive voices. How would we know, though, if it's a deceptive voice? By looking at the real thing, by understanding who Jesus really is and all that is found in him. You know, are there a lot of voices talking today? Just a couple quick stats here. Today, 1,761 TV stations will broadcast in the United States. 15,800 radio stations will be playing. There's 170 million Facebook users, give or take, as of right now. There's 104 million Instagram users. X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, averages 6,000 posts per second. And in addition to all of those, maybe you hear this voice, Mom, 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 right? There's a lot of voices leading in a lot of different directions. How will we ever know? By seeing the real thing for what it is. And the reality is there's a lot of things in our world that lie to us. You know, let me give you 3 things right off the top of my head that lie to us. Our culture lies to us. Do you know that there's this thing called an algorithm out there? And I think we're all, familiar with that at this point. That as soon as you click on something or you have interest in something, while the algorithm just feeds you that over and over again. And it can look like for all the world now, everybody's talking about this and everybody's going in this direction. But it could just be the algorithm leading you to think, here's what you want, here you go, here's more of the same. And how would we know those voices that exist there from the real thing? Look at the real thing. So our culture will lie to us. Maybe on social media we look and we are seeing everybody else's highlight reel, and then we look at our own lives and we see how far short of that comes, and we think we're the only one who's not succeeding and moving ahead. That's just an illusion in our day, and we're more aware of that than we've ever been. You know what else lies to us? Some people around us, and they're not always, mean-intentioned, but sometimes they tell us things that are not totally the truth. Do you remember back in the day when American Idol would show, now they only show people who kind of do really well. Back in the day, they would show some people who were terrible. They would go in there and they were just awful. And it was cringy to me back in the day because sometimes they'd come on and it was obvious that they were horrible. And the judges would just be like laughing at them. And I thought, that's not cool. That this person is up there and maybe they think they're good, I don't know, but they're terrible. And they're getting laughed at right now. And then they come out and they basically got turned down. And outside the door, right, their posse is waiting there, some family and friends. And when they get out there, Simon says I can't sing a lick. And that's the moment at which a family member should come up and go, Simon is right. And you should study accounting or something else. Give up this career in music. But instead they go, oh no, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Right? And the intentions are good, but sometimes we're not truthful. Something else that lies to us, you know what it is? It's you and me. And I heard this phrase, I don't know who said it first, but the person that we are most tempted to lie to is ourselves. And we can convince ourselves of a whole bunch of different things in all kinds of different ways that are not helpful. And so when it comes to these voices, how will we ever know? What could be some identifiers of things that would tell us that a voice is leading us in a new direction, and especially in the spiritual realm? How would we know what is taking us toward God or maybe what is trying to lead us away from God? Some things that come right out of this section of Colossians and this whole issue of the Gnostics telling us we got secret private information here. Let me give you 3 indicators of what that may look like. First is a new revelation. If somebody comes and says, hey, I got something that has never been heard of before, here's advice: run. Run the other way, because what God has intended has been revealed. God is not playing some game of hide and seek. And somebody who comes up with something that has never been heard from before, and this is what these Gnostics are saying, yeah, there's a whole bunch of different ideas that come along, but we and we alone, we have cracked this code over here. So I'll tell you this, what we do here on a regular basis on Sunday, it is pretty much the same message every week. And it's got different illustrations and stories and points around it. But you know what it is? Either we need to meet Jesus or we need to follow Jesus. And that's not a new revelation. That is the old, old, old story that is as true as it's ever been. That Jesus left heaven because he loves you. And because he loves you, he made a way for you to belong to him. And that's what he came. And in Colossians chapter 1, here's what Paul says. He came to rescue you. He came and qualified you, made you worthy. He took you from a kingdom of darkness and brought you to a kingdom of light. And that mystery has been revealed. That mystery is available to everybody. But if you hear somebody saying, hey, I got something that has never been heard of before, and this is where the truth is found, run, Forrest, run. The other thing is an appeal to ego. And again, the Gnostics were kind of saying this, hey, we've got this secret information, but you know what? Not everybody can get it, but you're special. You're special. And do you want to be more special? Because we can lead you in that direction. And there's something that maybe fills up that pride inside of the human soul that goes, well, yeah, I want to be special. And yeah, I want to go to a deeper level than most everybody else. And that can be an indicator. Because what Paul is telling us is the fullness of God is available to everyone in Jesus. And it's not found by going through rituals. It's found in a relationship with him. And then also one-way accountability. The Gnostics kind of work this way. Yeah, you're special. And as soon as they got in there, do you know how things changed? Well, now you're nothing. And you need to listen to us, and we'll tell you exactly what to do, but you don't question us because it kind of works like a multi-level marketing sort of deal, but you're at the bottom of the heap, and maybe through time and effort, you can work your way up. Paul was talking about having full access to everything that there is in Jesus. And isn't it interesting? A lot of times people who want to bring accountability to you, I think the question could be, well, who are you accountable to? And in that context, for those Gnostics, it was nobody. Ultimately, there was no one above them. And so Paul is saying, look, I'm contending, I'm wrestling, because there are some different voices out there, and they're speaking all kinds of different languages that can lead you in all kinds of different directions. I got Jesus for you. And everything you need is found in him. And then he goes on, he says, for though I am absent with you in the body, I am present with you in spirit, and delight to see how disciplined you are and how firm your faith in Christ is. So in other words, they've placed some structure around their faith, and right now he's saying your faith is strong. Now there's these voices, you're in a good place, you've done well, you've built a firm faith, and so far, so good. But now he's going to say and give us indication, some direction. How do we stay the course? How do we stay on track? How do we build that faith that continually leads us in the direction that God has for us? So the next two verses here, if you wanted a whole summary of the book of Colossians, here it is in just a couple verses. This is amazing. There's so much here. So then, just as you receive Christ Jesus as Lord, continue to live your lives in him, rooted and built up in him, strengthened in the faith as you were taught, and overflowing with thankfulness. And do you see what the Apostle Paul is telling us? He's telling us where you began, that's how you continue. And that there's some point in time where you put your hope and trust in him, and just as you did that, continue on in that same way. But let's break this down a little bit, and then we'll put it back together again. So then, just as you received Christ Jesus as Lord, that's in the past tense, that there was a point in time at which these people made that decision to put their hope, their trust in the Jesus of the Bible. You received him. And again, we might say, well, what does it mean to receive Jesus? Here's one of the things that helps us understand very clearly, that faith is received, not achieved. And we may think, well, isn't faith something that, we work really hard at? And if we work hard enough, God says, you made it. And Paul says, no, that's not it at all. You come as you are, and you put your hope and your trust in Jesus. You receive it. It's as if God puts that gift out there. He did what was necessary for us to be rescued. He has what qualifies us to be right with God. He has the power to transform us from one kingdom to another. It's his doing. And it's a gift that he extends to one and all. And we take hold of that gift by faith. It's all his grace. And Paul already talked about this back in chapter 1. The day you heard the gospel and truly understood God's grace, he's referring back to the day you received him. So what does it mean to receive him? I hear the gospel. It's God's work. And I get to trust it. And we understand it. And we put our trust in him. That's how you receive Christ into your life. It's not achievement. It's not us working our way into God's good graces. It's something that is extended to us as a gift. And so then, just as you receive Christ Jesus as Lord, continue to live your lives in him. And do you see how he's telling us the same way that you began is the way that you continue? The same way that you grow faith is really rooted in how you began. And how did you receive Jesus? Right? It was an act of faith, not achievement. And so now how do you grow? And I got to tell you, this dynamic right here is something that even in my own life, if we miss this, we can get ourselves into all kinds of trouble. And let me see if I can explain what I mean by that. If we think that, hey, God opens the door and grace is what gives me a shot, but on the other side of that, now what God is doing is looking at me and saying, okay, I gave you a chance, now you get your act together and you do everything you need in order to build your faith. The end result of believing that it's all up to me after God opens the door can lead us into one of two places, and neither one of them is good. Because if I'm working really hard and doing pretty well, you know what that does? It fills me with a whole lot of pride. And all of a sudden, I'm doing better than you. What's wrong with you? And pride is never going to be a helpful faith-growing experience for us. But the other version of that is that I cannot be doing so well, and then you know what it fills me with? Shame and self-condemnation. I'm so stupid. Why do I keep doing that? And I can just beat myself up and bash myself down. And that's why Paul says the way that you began, by putting your hope and trust in God's grace and taking hold of that by faith, that's how you continue. It's not that God opens a door. Okay, now I got to roll up my sleeves and get to work and try really hard because now God is looking. And we can turn the grace of God that got us there into a religion, which is us trying to work our way into God's good graces. I don't know who said this first, but I thought this was a really good contrast between religion and the gospel. Religion says, I messed up, Dad's going to kill me. The gospel says, I messed up, I need to call Dad. Because if it begins in grace, not with us being altogether righteous and holy, but instead just people who come and take hold of the grace of God, that's how the journey continues as well. Because at the end of the day, it's not about us trying harder. It's about us trusting more. And that doesn't mean that grace is opposed to effort. It's opposed to earning. But it invites us not to just view ourselves as the ones who make it happen. It's an invitation to trust him all the more. So Paul, what are you telling us about what faith is all about? Faith includes a past decision and a present condition. That there's a point in time at which I took that step of faith and trust, and now I am continuing in that, and I'm continuing the same way that I began, and it is by faith through the grace of God and leaning into that day by day by day. That's how faith grows. And then he's going to give us some pictures on how that happens. Rooted and built up in him, strengthened in the faith as you were taught, and overflowing with thankfulness. So let's break that down. First, he says rooted. That's a plant word. Have you planted something recently? Hopefully not in these oven temperature kind of days here, but maybe in springtime. You planted something and you take it out of that container, and boy, the roots are so vulnerable, aren't they? And you place them in the ground, and it is not automatic that that thing is just going to take off, right? It needs those roots to be activated, to grow down, to become deep, to become established, to gather up all the nutrients that allow that plant to thrive and to become healthy. So what does that mean in the arena of faith? Continuing faith gets grounded. It puts down some roots. It gets established. It gets to the place where what is needed to feed a spiritual life is something that is pouring in, that is spending time with God, being together with other people. Paul's writing here, and we see the word you, Y-O-U, and we think often in America, you is just you singular, but every time he does it, it's you plural. That faith is not a solo journey, that it is an all skate. And our faith grows when we're around others and when we are engaging God and what he has revealed to us. I was doing some work in my yard yesterday morning, and this whole image of roots became a little bit clear to me. Can I show you a couple plants in my backyard? These were planted last year. The one on the left is doing great. The one on the right is on life support. And I hope you can see that. The one on the left is just bright and green and growing, and the other one is drooping and sagging and becoming brown. They're right next to each other. They're in the same soil. They have the same amount of water. They have all the same conditions. One has roots that have become established. The other is not. And you cannot grow something healthy if there is a root that has not been grounded and established and providing what is needed. Paul says our faith is like that, where we need to sink down some roots and get established. And then he says rooted and built up. Built up is a construction word, and it's the same way that you put together a building. And where one piece gets put in place, you saw it on the video with some of the decks being built in the SERB project a couple of years ago. And there's this idea that something can be built up, something can be put together and become something strong and something that just enables life to happen there. And so what does that mean? Continuing faith grows. So there's a point in time in the past when you took that step of faith and trust. There is an ongoing and continuing aspect to faith as well. It is a journey that we take together with God and with each other. And when that happens, our faith can be built up. And then he says, strengthened in the faith that you were taught. That's a legal word, where it would be as if a lawyer was going into a courtroom and arguing their case. And so how is faith like that? Well, it is this rational thing that is not just, hey, a blind leap into the dark, but when we put down roots and we are strengthened and built up, there is this reality that makes sense of life and everything that makes it up. So what does that mean? That means that continuing faith gets stronger as time goes on, as we engage it. Now, we may think, well, didn't you just say we begin by grace and take hold of that gift by faith? And isn't he now saying, okay, I got to get planting and I got to get building and I got to get, my story together and all of that? Let me just show you something here in the grammar. Those three words that he used, those three verbs that he used, they are in the passive voice. And what that means in the passive voice is that the action is being done upon or to someone. It's not the person doing it. This is not get busy, get yourself together, it's all up to you. Instead, this is telling us the same God who breathed spiritual life into us the moment we trusted him is the one who then goes to work in that ongoing journey to build up and strengthen that faith so that it can stand not just on the good days, but on the difficult days as well. And what this means is that Jesus is the one doing the doing. And so as we engage our faith, our ongoing growth is not our responsibility, it's not in our capability, but it is God's work. Every bit a gift, just as we began our journey with him. And then he concludes the section by saying this, overflowing with thankfulness. If you want maybe the greatest indicator of where is my faith right now, there it is. Because this is the only one of those words that's mentioned there that would belong to you and me at the end of the day, is that the overflow of what God is doing in our lives is thankfulness. Is that we would see everything that makes up our life as a gift. The fact that I can belong to God is his doing. The fact that I'm on a journey with him is his doing. The fact that this is all ultimately going somewhere and one day he will bring it to a conclusion of his choosing and there is eternity waiting with God together here and now, life with him as Christ in you, the hope of glory. And at the end of this life, it is with you, with him forever and ever. And it is all his doing from beginning to end. So everything that makes up my life is just purely a gift. It's purely a gift. So is Jesus enough? And I'm going to paraphrase the Apostle Paul. Nope. Jesus is more than enough. Way more than enough. And everything you need is found in him. And everything necessary for a life of faith. A faith that can grow strong. And even in the moments when all kinds of different voices are speaking, all kinds of different languages taking us in all kinds of different directions, we can follow Jesus. Because everything we need is found in him. Well, Paul tells us, faith begins in a moment and it continues with momentum. That, there's a point in time in which we need to make that commitment, make that decision. And then there's an ongoing journey. So let me ask you a couple questions as we wrap this up here. Have you had your moment? Has there been a point in time in which you have nailed down that commitment, that decision, and recognized Jesus came to my rescue? Jesus is the one who makes me worthy. Jesus is the one who takes me out of the kingdom of darkness, brings me into the kingdom of light. Have you had that moment of taking hold of his grace with your faith? And if you've had that, how's your momentum doing? How are your roots doing right now in getting established and just feeding you what ultimately draws you closer to him? Are you being built up? Is your faith being put together in one way or another? Are you being strengthened? And as you understand that it's not just, I believe that I believe that I believe. No, faith in Jesus is tied to something that actually happened in this world. And that Jesus lived and died and rose again. He lived the life I should have, but couldn't. Laid it down. And then rose again from the dead. And then my hope for eternity one day with him is found in him. Have you had your moment? And how's your momentum? Would you stand together with me? And just before I pray to close us, let me ask you and just give you the opportunity. Is now the time and is today the day to nail it down? That you make a commitment, you make a decision to receive Jesus. And to recognize that a relationship with God, it's all his doing. He has given grace. And maybe you're here today and you know what, you've kind of been floating or coasting for a while as a time to re-engage that faith is a time to bring some momentum into that faith, that continuing faith that continues the same way it began, by leaning into the grace and the love of God and allowing him to do the work in and through you. If you do want to take that step, I want to just lead you in this prayer. There are no special words. It is the desire of your heart to be made right with God. And I just want to let you know today, if you do that, we have a devotional, a little booklet that's available to you right out the doors in the back. And it's available to you to just get that journey off and running. And if you've been coasting for a while and you want to re-engage, I think that same little booklet will be helpful to you. It's called Now That You Said Yes. And so I invite you to grab one of those on the way out. And so if you want to take that step of faith and trust, it could sound something like this. Jesus, I believe that you came to my rescue, that you came to make me worthy even to stand before a holy God, not because of who I am, because of who you are. And I believe that you want to make me a part of your kingdom. And so I put my hope and my trust in you today. I receive Jesus today. And so God, lead me along in a relationship with you and help me to walk with you. And in the middle of all the different voices that are speaking, God, let my focus be on you so that my faith grows stronger and stronger, and come what may in this broken down world of ours, that I can keep my eyes locked on you. Lead me in that direction for your name's sake. And we ask and pray all of this in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen.